Welcome back, Shouters, to the Go Shout Love podcast. I am Seth Carnell, and I'm very happy to bring to you Dan and Liz, the parents to 4 beautiful children, one of which is Case, an 8-year-old boy with a slew of diagnoses, of which I'm not sure where to begin. There's a blog you can find on GoShout.love that will help you read about and understand a little bit more about Case's medical situation outside of what is talked about in this episode. Dan and Liz are wonderfully vulnerable in this conversation. It will only take a few seconds for you to feel engaged into this conversation. At least that's how it was for me. It is a very fluid conversation that invites you in and allows you to feel the reality of having a child on a rare medical journey. You will hear about growth in each person individually and growth in their marriage. You will hear about advocacy of their child throughout the medical journey and how important it is to personalize their concerns to professionals. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you right now, but I hope after listening to this, it does. Along these lines, there is advocacy and faith. Often in these conversations, you will hear a lot about faith and religion and prayer. One kind of comment that is addressed in this talk is, quote, "If you just pray harder, he will be healed," unquote. I will just leave that comment right here for you to ponder, and then listen to the response that Dan and Liz give in this episode. In this interview is Josh Veach, our fearless leader and co-director. With him is Kristen Estock, the founder of Go Shout Love and our community relations director. When you are done listening, please take a second to rate and review us on whatever platform you are listening on. These stories are important. Hearing these families and hearing their voices are important, and reaching the people who might benefit from it is important. And we need you to help us by rating and reviewing. We pick up the conversation with Dan and Liz talking about the role their work plays in their life and how Case has helped shape how they view their jobs and the world in general.
We definitely feel like we both found our callings. Like, I am to help parents be able to live in this new world with joy.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is my job. And Dan's is to bring creativity and purpose into lives, and just like, because he's so talented, but our talents are totally opposite. So Dan's like extremely creative.
I think they really
mesh really well together. Yeah, and I'm not creative at all, but I'm really good with words and writing. So that's why we can do pretty good vlogs when we have
Yeah,
them.
that's perfect.
Oh, he's
I can't. I've never been able to really vocalize my emotions. I feel like that's like a hard thing for me, because I don't know. I just feel like I can't. In my head, I have this saying that I can't tell you, but I can show you.
Yeah.
I've never really told anyone that before, but I feel like that's where the video comes in. I just feel like I do have a talent there. I don't really know where it came from, but I feel like that's almost my voice.
And I really think Case pushed us to this.
Yeah.
Like, we lived in these comfortable little, I'll just be a stay-at-home mom forever, and he'll just make the money however he has to. And then we have this child that's born, and we were so young. Like, I was telling Kristen, I was 26. We had 4 kids. One was very sick. But I think that one way to show everybody's true colors is to have a sick kid. And it brings out either the best or the worst in you. And he definitely brought out the best in us, for the most part.
Yeah.
How have you seen that in Dan?
In Dan, I see that it's made him a lot more patient. I see that it helps him to see the world in a creative way. Dan is very stubborn, and but I feel like stubborn is not a bad thing. And so when Case came along, I just saw this drive that I had never seen before to be who he needed to be for me and for the kids. I saw it strengthen our marriage. Even whenever I thought it was, that we would go through seasons that were really tough, but we would come out stronger. So I saw it make him a better husband, a better communicator. He does struggle. He struggles with communication. Like I do not. Dan does, but I saw it help him to communicate better, because when you have a child that depends on you for their livelihood, for their entire life. You have to be able to communicate what is best for that child with everybody multiple times, with like the same facilities, the same group of people. So I've seen that also has definitely, like, that's one of another ways that Case has made you better. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think just you can't understand it unless you actually have a child with special needs to any capacity. People try to relate, and I understand that they're trying to relate and connect and empathize with us, but you can't unless you're in the shoes. I think it sounds cliche, but you just really learn to appreciate everything, the little things, each day.
Each day not in the hospital.
Sometimes you can get caught up in worrying about tomorrow or next week, but you just really have to focus on what you have right now at the moment.
Yeah, because, and I think it goes a lot off of what Josh had said, because if you live fear-based with a child that is chronically ill, and I see this, like I see people live this way, it completely traps you. Like, you're completely trapped inside of yourself, because, like, you're so afraid of the what ifs. So if Dan and I were to tell you for an entire hour all of the negative or hard possibilities, you would be terrified. So you cannot live in fear. It's a very difficult thing for me. Like, so, for a while I would have, I don't think they were night terrors, but so we have nurses at our house at night, and during Case's sickest seasons, I don't have it right now because it's not his sickest, but I would sit up in the middle of the night and I would say, "Come in," because I heard somebody knocking. And then I would say, "Come in, Sally," whoever the nurse was. And Dan would say, "Go back to sleep. There's nobody at the door." So, fear was completely engulfing me sometimes through the night. And that was something that was very difficult to cope with, because when I was sleeping, in some of the dreams that I would have were horrific. So I think, and you live in a world where, and I don't know about all of the families that you're working with, but I know that the three of us that are together, we've all come really close to losing our children. Them more than me. But when you know that it's a possibility that your child's heart will stop beating, you absolutely cannot live that way. Which is more difficult for me, because I would talk about the what ifs and Dan would be like, no. But yeah, so we've had these near-death experiences with him. And I think what's tough, too, is you never want it to be something, like, you actually start to think, like when he's really sick and he had like central lines get infected. Infections kill children, right? People. So it was difficult to think that losing him could have been preventable. So there was a while where I did struggle with that. Just not knowing.
What do you mean that you struggled with that? Do you mean like the weight of that? Like the stress
fear
of your role in trying to keep anything bad from happening? Or
being trapped in that fear?
I would say a little bit of all of it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because when he was really sick and he had he's had infection in his blood, like he's gotten really sick before, I struggle with not letting the fear of losing him, particularly to something preventable, rule me.
Like, as for
Is this
as
too
an
deep for you?
example, no. As an example, like when he had the Metaport and we would have to access that at home ourselves, if the environment wasn't sterile enough and he ended up with infection due to something that we did. I think that's what you're saying.
So,
Like the weight of the unknown and
Yes.
trying to be careful that you don't accidentally cause something that
Yes.
could be catastrophic.
yes, because the responsibility that you have medically. So we were given a lot of responsibility, which was good because we could take our child home and care for them. Like 100 years ago, you don't take children home with IVs. It's just not what you do. And the Mediport was a port that a lot of like chemo patients have, and it's underneath their skin. And the line to deliver for case nutrition is in the main vein by the heart. And so every week you take something with a long, like a 1-inch needle or 3/4 inch needle, and you stick it into the port. And if the entire environment is not sterile, you could breathe on the needle the wrong way. You're basically, what you're doing is you're sticking infection into his body. And so with a child that is chronically ill, you have so much responsibility. And it is hard to not fear that you would do something wrong, that you would, hook up the wrong TPN or flush the line the wrong way. It took Dan a long time to be comfortable with those sort of things. But, we're both working full time, so we both have to do it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. Dan, Liz answered, she talked about how she has seen you grow from this journey. How have you seen Liz grow as a mom and as a wife and as a human because of the journey with Case?
I feel when we first started dating, it was in 2000, so 19 years ago. 2000?
2000.
19 years ago. I feel like she always had a drive, but she was always kind of quiet. She was one of 6 kids. She was the second oldest. And I could see that kind of fire, I guess, inside of her, but it never really came out. She was a little bit like our second oldest, just kind of go with the flow, even if she didn't disagreed or anything. And I feel like it just, once we had to be in the position that we were in, I just saw that drive and that the fire just come out, really, literally, a lot of times.
Sometimes it's not very pretty.
To the point where it's uncomfortable in doctors' offices. But when you look at the big picture, it's parents like us, any special needs parents, any parents in general, know their child better than the doctor.
Right.
So for her to actually speak up on his behalf was amazing. It's pretty good.
Kind of unlocked the advocate voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to the point where Dan will kick the side of my foot if he doesn't like where it's going. Mm-hmm. And I used to stop, and now I just kick back.
So I can kind of...
Was that immediate, or did you have to learn?
No. Yeah, I don't know. So in the NICU, I don't know. That's a good question. I think that some of it was immediate. As the time goes on, it gets stronger.
More confident.
Yeah, I think what's difficult, though, is there is a certain way to advocate well. I have 2 rules. Do not scream and do not swear.
Okay.
I scream and swear all of the time, but...
Not with doctors?
Not at the doctors, no.
That's good.
So I feel like when you cross the line to irrational, everybody stops listening to you. Mm-hmm. But if you
and
are
then you're just the
firm...
emotional mom.
Yeah, you're just the crazy
Right.
mom. Crazier than crazy. We're all crazy. But
It's written in her charts and all the...
Watch out
we're
for
pretty
this one.
sure.
Yeah.
We do think that there are nuts. But the pharmacist the other day was like, I'm going to write a big note on you. I was like, join the freaking club. I know. There's notes about me. But insurance companies are a big one. Pharmacies are a big one. Sometimes doctors, I think that it is very, very important to do it with respect. So this is my child, and this is my maternal opinion. This is your medical opinion. And when it gets to the point where I'm really struggling to help them to see what Dan and I really feel needs to be done, I say, what if this were your child? And there was one doctor in particular, he had said his son's name previously. So I said, what if this were your son? What if this were X, Y, Z?
Yep.
Bring some humanity
What if he
into
were
it.
doing A, B, and C, like our son is doing? What would you want done for blank?
And did that make him respond?
Oh my gosh, yeah, we finally got what we had been fighting.
It's a
9
good
months
tip
for.
for other
Yeah.
families.
Well, and a lot of families that we talk to, the frustration that they often voice with medical professionals is that it's almost like you guys are coming to the office with the full history of the complexities of what's going on in Case's body. You've lived it every day. You know these details. And to them, while their knowledge is incredible, they don't see cases like Case every day. Like, they don't know all the complexities of his body. And I think that's where a lot of these families talk about the encouragement they get from other parents who are along similar paths that can help guide them. And then they almost become, I don't want to say more of an expert than the doctors, but maybe pretty close because of how much research and experience that they have on the situations or symptoms or syndromes that are specific with their child. And I'm sure that has to be a frustrating thing for parents, but I also would think that a lot of that has to depend on the medical professional too. Like, if their posture is one of, I'm the doctor so I know all, that's going to probably create a pretty tough environment. But if they're an active listener, I would assume that would maybe make that not quite as bad. But
for the most part, I think most of the doctors that we have encountered do really take into account what we have to say. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it goes back to our approach. It is really important to us that we continue to respect his doctors because his life is literally in their hands.
Yeah.
So if we are going to continue to have him treated by these medical professionals, then we have to respect them. If and when we don't respect them, because we just don't think that they are doing a good job anymore, then we need to seek other help, right? So, and it's tough. I mean, and that can't apply to every child. There are multiple times that we're in the ER or, we've got a doctor on call, and they'll say, Case is not presenting like a typical case of intussusception. I know, because Case is not typical by any stretch of the imagination. So I need you to take him into sonogram right now because I'm telling you this is what's happening. So like when you have doctors that you don't know or you don't work with regularly, I think that it is more difficult to respect them. But I think that something that I see doesn't always work for parents is, like I said, when they get irrational and they start to get too angry that they cannot work well anymore with a particular professional. Because they really, I truly think that for the most part, they have your child's best interest in mind. And sometimes we've had to meet at middle grounds. And that is hard, particularly for me. And sometimes I have to wait. There was that surgery that I wanted, the one that took me 9 months, and it took me saying, if this were your son, a very important surgery was supposed to happen. And it didn't. And so for 9 months, I advocated and I fought respectfully and I tried and I pushed and I talked to other doctors, and then it happened. And I think if I would have completely lost my cool and completely flipped out, people would have stopped respecting me in return.
Right.
And Dan would have hated that. I'm a whole lot of crazy sometimes.
Here at Go Shout Love, we do amazing things for amazing families on rare medical journeys. This month, we are highlighting Case and his family. Please visit our website at GoShout.love to support Case through the purchase of a t-shirt, sweater, hoodie, or other items. Every item sold in October will go towards travel costs for treatment and needed medications. If you would like to join us in shouting love every month for families like this, please go and start a subscription. And when you do so, and you go to checkout, use the discount code PODCAST, and you will receive $5 off your first month's order. Now, if you're wondering if the second half of this podcast is as good as the first, feel free to listen and find out. I personally think it was.
Your work, you actually have a job that has a connection to your role as a parent.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So I'm a family support specialist. This year is my 4-year anniversary. I work for a home health company that works with pediatrics. And what we do is staff nursing. So we do nursing at night for the parents to sleep, nursing during the day for school and work, and then some household duty nursing. And I work for all 6 of the offices in Western PA. I work one-on-one with the parents, grandparents, whoever is, involved in caring for the child. And I help them find resources. I work with them to help them accept things that are difficult. If they're new to nursing is tough. We always say, and this is something I learned at my training, and I use this a lot, is we are a company that nobody wants to use. So nobody wants their child to be sick enough.
Right. They don't want to be in the position where they need that support.
No.
Yeah.
But people need it. So a lot of times I work with the families being comfortable with a nurse in their home at night, with a nurse taking their child to school, with a nurse in their home while they're working. Then I work with them when something new, so the child's getting a G-tube or a trach. I go into the hospital and visit the kiddos every week. I can sit with their mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, have coffee with them, introduce them to things that I wish I would have known about, just as simple as like a pretty little pad for around the Mickey button, or a stroller that's a little bit easier to use. We can find a charity that will help with that. So it's just like, it's a whole lot of support for families that are very similar to ours. Mm-hmm. And the families are awesome because what better person to talk to than somebody who's doing it?
Right.
So if somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, nursing your home is going to be totally fine," I'll be like, "Cool, you don't know." But I'm like, so I do know because I've been doing it for 8 years. So it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So in many ways, you're like the friend that every family needs.
Yes. I have professional friendships.
Yeah.
All of the time.
Yeah. What other tips would you give to someone who is a friend of a family that's on a rare medical journey, on how to be a supportive friend, how to connect, and they can't, like Dan said, they can't fully understand what you're going through, but how do you be a good friend, as to be supportive in a season like that?
I would say the first thing you do is you listen for as long as you possibly can. And then you listen a little bit more. No, I'm just kidding. But I think listening is really key. And just loving with your entire heart. So I've always been, maybe to a fault, somebody who really loves a whole lot. So if you can genuinely care about these people, keep it very professional, but know that they're hurting. And I think that, when I work with these families, whether it's through my job or it's through social media, they become part of my journey too. The more you work with a family, you're bringing them home at night, and you're thinking of more things that you can, more things you can share with them to help their journey just be a little bit easier. I would tell them to find the joy in the journey and to focus on the positivity. I would tell them that it's not going to get easier, because it's not. And
it just changes.
It just changes. And so if you're going to...
Would you say to them that it's not going to get easier, but you're going to get stronger? Would that be
absolutely.
a fair thing to say?
Yes. So this is Dan and I's theory, is that we were not born strong. Our strength came just when we needed it on our journey. So we truly believe that your strength comes during your journey. So when you feel the absolute weakest, your strength comes. And that's why outsiders say to you all the time, "We have no idea how you do it." Or, "We couldn't," my favorite, "we couldn't do what you do." What would you do? put them in the woods and run away? Seriously, you don't have to put that in there. But no, seriously, what would you do?
Absolutely.
You would do what we're doing because you have no other option.
Right.
So there's nothing special about us. It's just that we have learned how to raise a child and their siblings that has a whole lot of extra needs.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
So you would, to someone who's not in those shoes or hasn't been through that, they would do it, but they would not end up the same person they were when they started.
Absolutely not, no. So another thing that if I were to talk to somebody who wanted to support other families like theirs and ours and all of the families you work with, I would tell them that when they work with these families, one of the biggest things that we talk about is this is your new normal. So everything that you knew, a whole lot of your comfort and your friends with typical children, the way that you engage with them and how you feel about all of that is going to change. Not necessarily for the worse, it's just going to be different.
Right.
So you're going to have an entirely new world. And it's going to turn upside down, but maybe you weren't right side up. So like, yeah, I should totally blog about that.
There you go.
I know. So yeah, your world's going to turn upside down, but maybe this is the way you're supposed to live. Maybe there is no right side or upside. There's just the way you're living, your new normal.
I think something else that we talk about on a pretty regular basis is that with the number of families that we've met and connected with on our journey, you see kind of the two sides of it. You see the people who encounter all of this, what they consider negativity or whatever you want to call it, and they just live a life where they're angry and upset, and they do
Bitter.
kind of go off all the time, just not happy people. But then you see the other group of people who take it and they want to go head on and just attack it and just do what they can with what they've been handed.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can, and it's something that you can absolutely learn to love. And I remember we knew when I was pregnant with Case that he was not going to be born healthy. We knew that there were a lot of differences and it was super scary. And I remember that we had this theory that no matter what, everything was going to be okay. And I think that people were like, no. Well, we didn't talk about it a lot, but if we would have, people would have been like, no, losing a child's not okay, and having a sick child's not okay, and having a child that is disabled is not okay. And we had no idea what life was going to look like when I delivered this baby. But I remember that we were both just so stubborn, we decided it's going to be okay.
Yeah. No matter
matter what.
That's good.
It could be really hard. It could be really sad. It could be really trying. But no matter what, we've got to be okay. Like, we've got a life to continue living.
Yeah.
That says a lot about your perspective, because okay can be defined multiple different ways, right?
Right.
And to be at a place where you say, no matter the outcome, we'll make it okay. Like, we'll figure out we'll define what okay is.
Right.
That's good.
And that's really hard.
And that's really countercultural.
It is.
Yeah.
Because society today is like, okay means living the American dream with the white picket fence and
I'm comfortable.
right.
So Dan and I have that theory too, that things are, that no one ever promised we would be comfortable. Nowhere did we ever get some kind of free pass to being comfortable. So if the baby did not live, we believed he would be in heaven. So he would be okay, right? So the baby would be okay, which therefore meant we would be okay. And we would cry, and we would be angry, and we would struggle for a little bit, but we have to be okay.
You have that faith, and that's what makes people's heads spin. They don't understand how you could say you would be okay.
Right.
And
But that child still had a purpose,
Yes.
served its purpose, and
Yes.
is continuing to
Yes.
serve its
Yes.
purpose.
And that's exactly it. That's a big point. That another thing that we talk about a lot is that so many people would say, "Oh, if you pray hard enough, he'll be healed." You know, yeah. And just
Yeah,
you
that
just
was
go down
necessary.
that you go down that whole path, and we talk about it now and how it's funny because I can't say that I've never prayed that he would be healed,
Right.
but I've prayed more that God teaches me something through what he has given us. And we wouldn't be where we are today without, he was a blessing.
Yes, exactly the way he was. So that was something that we struggled with a lot. So here you have these young 20-somethings being told that if you just prayed a little bit harder, your baby will be healed. And then I would throw up on my feet and I would say, what if he is healed? What if this is exactly how this baby is supposed to be?
Right.
What if every part of his body, the missing kidney and the broken heart and the really broken intestines and every deformity is 110% how God intended it to be? And then they'd be like, well, no. And I would be like, well, goodbye.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's something huge for us, is that we truly believe without a shadow of a doubt that he is made perfectly imperfect.
That's good. Yeah. And it comes to, which will take a very long time, but society needs to shift our
Yes.
perspective.
Absolutely.
What is okay to society is just complete opposite of what it just needs a complete shifting.
Absolutely, because with the white picket fence comes 1.25 or 2.5 perfectly healthy children,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
when you have this child that is not healthy, everybody's head spins. The
Yep.
people that are natural worriers worry more. The people that are naturally self-pitiers self-pity more. The people that are naturally bitter get more bitter.
Yeah.
And that's why whenever I do advocate for him, I do not do it in a way that's irrational. For the most part, I really don't, because I've seen people scream and swear and nobody listens to them. So there's got to be this middle ground where we live in this world that makes sense to nobody else, and that's totally fine with us. Because we don't think he's broken.
Right. He's not.
He's completely whole.
Yeah.
And he was never broken. So there's no fixing him. There's no praying to fix him. And when he is sick, we don't want him to be sick. But I totally think that throughout his entire life and his tiny 8-year-old self, that he's totally cool with it. I think that there's something inside of him that knows that he is brought to this world to bring good. And he's like, okay, bring it.
And I'll bring the medical complexities along with
Yeah.
me. No big
Yeah.
deal.
Show up. I
Yeah.
will show them. And not that he doesn't get emotional or have bad days, but ever since he was little, it was yeah,
It's his normal.
Yeah.
his normal.
Would you say that you've always had that perspective that you just talked about, as far as he's created perfectly imperfect? Or how long did it take you to get to the point where you could say that?
So I remember very vividly the first time that we knew that there were pretty big issues. We actually went to New York and spent a night at Niagara Falls with the girls. Liz had a phone call from a doctor, and we thought we were having a fourth girl for a couple months. And
We named her.
the doctor called and said, you know better than I, but I just remember at that point, I just really embraced the idea whatever happens is going to happen. I can't do anything to change it.
Do you really
That's
remember?
it.
That was your turning point.
Yeah, just because I thought I'm not letting this just consume me.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's developed and I've grown over the years, but I feel
Sure.
like that was there from early on.
Sure. Liz, what about for you?
I think for me, it was, I don't know, before I had Case, I would tell you, I feel like we always say there's like an AC and a BC, BC and an AC, before Case, after Case, you know, and like, I think the BC me would think I'm totally insane because I had a different kind of faith and a different kind of understanding and a different kind of mentality. But then it's like with Case, I think it was definitely during my pregnancy. You know what? I think I know when it was. I was watching TV in our room, and you were working, and I was watching this show, and somebody said something bad. Oh, this girl had a miscarriage, and they quoted the verse, "Be thankful in all circumstances." And I remember thinking, holy crap. Like, is that really a thing? Be thankful in all circumstances. So like bad circumstances, good circumstances. And I was journaling at the time, and the hard stuff was even hard to journal. I remember like there was I didn't even want to write things down on paper because it was like scary, you know? But I remember journaling that I was going to commit to just having a thankful spirit and a thankful demeanor in all circumstances. So I think that was mine. And I don't remember what part of my pregnancy that was early on.
Yeah. So for both of you, before even Case is born, you kind of set the stage and you're 8 years in.
Yep.
What were the expectations given around his birth?
To prepare for burial.
Like exact words.
Wow.
Yeah. So, on December 8th, he was born on the 21st. On December 8th, we were told to prepare to bury our child. And if he did live past birth, he would have a very low quality of life. But that's a whole nother topic, quality of life. I mean, I could go on for hours. But yeah, so expectations were that he would not live past birth, and if he did, it wouldn't be for long, and if he did for long, it wouldn't be well. They just thought that his body was just not strong enough, not healthy enough to live past birth.
Wow. And so, how long into Case's life did you live with that at the front of your mind versus kind of just kind of that having been the expectation to shift from looking and like waiting for that moment as this is coming to Case has a life to live. We're not expecting that outcome.
That's a good question.
I don't know. With me, I think it kind of gave me, and it kind of goes back to a little bit what I was talking about before, but it's just a new perspective. I look at all of my kids that like in the same light. I think because I worked for the news for a little over a year, so I saw terrible things, and no one is guaranteed tomorrow. And he could live until he's 80, or somebody could walk out and get hit by a car or something. I mean, you have no idea. So I think for me, I just try to keep that in front of my mind and just appreciate each day.
I'm very similar. I also work in a field where I've seen a lot of really horrible things, and I've seen entirely too many mommies bury their babies. So I feel like I also try really hard to not live in the fear of losing him, but to live knowing that he has a whole lot of life to give right now. If he would, if something were to happen and he would, I think that I I don't ever want to tell myself that he's never going to get really sick again, or that, you know, it couldn't get really bad, because I want to be realistic and know that that's a possibility. But living in that, knowing, you know, that living in the fear of something happening to him would do me no good. So I don't think you ever really get rid of that. Something bad could happen, but for us, but you just live knowing that you want to get the most out of all the time you have with him. All of your children, just in case. I don't know. That didn't make a lot of sense. Did it?
No, it made sense. Got
I was
it.
going to say it made sense to me because it's kind of my same thought
Yeah.
process.
Well, and it goes back to what we talked about before as far as the fear-driven. Like, you can't live in that.
No, and I haven't completely conquered that, but it's something that I think that you just do every day, is you try to live that life the best that you can.
And for me, I think it's not necessarily, I don't think the healthiest thing, but like I said, I can't communicate or convey my emotions or feelings that great, so I tend to bottle things up. And usually when I do that, I just kind of ignore it, I guess. Not really denial, but I just think, you know, I mean, I still treat him the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's good.
You guys seem so like such a team, and your family seems so tight-knit. Do you guys have advice on how, especially to a family going into this, on how to keep that tight-knit?
I mean, our kids were like literally hitting each other on the way here, so
Yeah.
no, for real. Like full blood. We were like, why are we hitting?
Especially in long car
cars?
rides. It's like, I'm bored.
Before
so
we
I'm
had a
just gonna start
minivan,
hitting
I was
you.
like, we got to get like an extra large long van so we could put like one
Yeah.
child per row.
Sidecar.
Sidecar.
I hear that.
Yeah. Close knit. So
I mean, early on in our marriage, we
were
some-
super, super young, right? So high school
Yeah.
sweethearts. Remember that.
Yeah.
Junior high sweethearts.
We had some, I mean, marital issues, and it was hard. But I think the thing that kept us together, when I wasn't giving anything, Liz was still giving 100%. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we see anymore, is that, like, so many people look at it as the 50-50, you know, for relationships. But I mean, I feel like for a relationship to work, you need to pour your heart and soul into it.
Absolutely.
Like, you need to give
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, and this is something that we had established before Case was born. So, yeah, when our girls were still babies, our oldest two were really rough. I think every marriage has this rough patch, at least I want to believe that, where you're like, oh my God, we're married forever and we're not sure about all this.
Because, I mean, we were in
We
our
were,
early
like,
20s. All of our
you were
friends were out
Literally
partying.
babies. I
Like,
was 19, pregnant with our first. You were 20.
You
Yeah,
were
so
babies.
babies.
Yeah.
We were babies. And so when our first two were very, very young, we had a very difficult patch. And coming out of that, we decided that we would commit to giving 100% all of the time. So when I'm not giving 100%, I know that Dan is. And then there's days where we're both like, 0%.
Right.
Those days are like super crappy. But no, and I think that another thing that is very cultural is like, well, this is 50-50. Like, you give 50% of everything and I give 50% of everything. But just like Dan said, when he decided he was going to quit his job, and I was like, dude, just do it. You know, and like, income was cut in half, and I was carrying all of that weight, and some days it was hard, but it totally went back to our 100% from both of us all of the time. I think your marriage is going to fail if you only give 50%.
And I think there's like a subliminal.
said it that way.
No. I think there's a subliminal switch too that I can't pinpoint when it happened, but maybe actually around the time Case was born or when you were pregnant, that when one of us would be really struggling with, I mean, anything, just being scared or fearful or sad, the other one would pick the other up.
Yeah.
And that's just something that, like I said, I just kind of happened.
Yeah.
We never have hard times at the same time.
No.
Oh God. This is
Thank God, yeah.
I
I mean, and if we do, it's probably only lasts like a day. But I think through hospitalizations, like, Nikki was really, really hard on me. And Dan was, like, super strong through it. Like, I would call him and be like, oh my gosh, I just walked into the room and they're doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm just done. I'm done. And Dan would be like, it's cool. Like, let's think of all of the reasons why this is okay. And just, like, wipe your face, get yourself a Snickers bar, walk back into the room. It's going to be fine. Yeah, seriously. I am hangry all of the time.
They
Oh,
call
there's
you
a
Betty,
commercial.
Call you Betty White. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like those long, we had this eight appointments in one day.
Oh my God.
And like by number 4, Dan was like, what can I get you from the cafeteria? Like I'm going to get you
That was
something.
partially just so I could get
What can I
away
get out of
from
the
it.
How can I get out of the
how
room?
can I leave?
How can I
and
serve
then
you by
feed
leaving?
you?
Yes.
Yes. And Case sometimes handles these things better than I do or better than Dan does.
Yeah.
But when one of us is really struggling, the other one is usually doing pretty well. And so for some reason, I think that that's a gift. I see it in our children too, especially like we kind of have 2 groups. Like we have the 2 older ones and we have the 2 younger ones. And so when, one is really struggling, the other one isn't. And I don't know if that's like the universe saying y'all would kill each other if y'all did it at the same time.
No one could handle everyone.
No
down
one
at the
can
same
handle all of
Right.
this happening. But yeah, so I think that's probably the best advice we could give.
Yeah, that's
is
good.
stop that 50-50 bull.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think
have
that's
not sworn this
I think there's a certain element of that is only that kind of thing only happens when there's trust.
Yes.
Like when you can be 100% honest, and I think that the fact that your kids are in that same boat says a lot about you as parents in the midst of a really difficult journey.
Yeah.
That you haven't lost that. You haven't lost that fight or ability to keep that honesty and intimacy as a family. I think that says a lot about you guys.
I think, yeah, I really appreciate that. Because some days are really tough. And, like, sometimes I'll look at Dan and I'll be like, they're going to talk about that at therapy. Like, I think that you can just, like, have really bad days and where you can completely lose your cool. And at the end of the day, like, there's, like, 1,000 things that you wish you would have done differently. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, we're all doing this together. And it's always been about what's best for the entire family. Like, not what's best for the moodiest kid at the time or what's best for the child that's being the loudest. What's best for the entire family. So how can we make these decisions based on our family? And I don't know if it's because we were so young or because, like, we're going on 17 years of marriage. So we've been married, like...
I thought it was 16.
17. 16?
16.
I don't know.
Oh, I got it.
2003.
I
What
hope
would
you're
that be?
rolling on that.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. 16. It's like a lot of years. No, and I think, like, that might be why.
Your marriage can almost drive.
No, our marriage seriously can drive in November.
Yeah.
Like one, and then like 6 months after, because that's the permit. Depends on which state you're living in.
I guess
right?
that's true. In Missouri, it's 16. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In PA, 16 and a half. But yeah, so we've been married forever, and we've based a whole lot on just this family unit. Mm-hmm. So, like, there's a whole lot of strength in the 6 of us. There has to be.
Thank you, Shouters, so much for listening. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, the Go Shout Love team. And I'm sure Dan and Liz would agree. Once again, thank you to Dan and Liz for being so vulnerable and for being wonderfully engaging in this conversation. Please take a second to rate and review us on whatever platform you are listening on. It goes a long way in helping to shout love for families and allow them to have their stories and their voices heard, and maybe reaching somebody who could use a good word like this. Also, go to GoShout.love to help and support Case and his family by buying a t-shirt, hoodie, or sweatshirt. There's some new hoodies and sweatshirts available. I love them. I just ordered mine. Very excited to get them in. And once you get your t-shirt and your hoodie and your sweatshirt in, please put it on and go and shout some love. Thanks, everyone, for listening.